Oh, look at the wonderful folks who are hanging in here with us. This is great. Thank you. Thank you. You know, it's a long day, but every single panel has been like amazing, hasn't it been? Oh my gosh, there is so much going on. I loved hearing those students. We have a very special treat now, another fabulous journalist. This morning we heard from an opinion columnist at the Washington Post, and I don't know if, by the way, you saw between this morning and now the Post has refused to issue an endorsement for anybody. They took the cowardly way out, so there you go. We had a big discussion of that this morning with Jennifer Rubin. But our alumna class of 2012, what, are you a green class? You're wearing green. You're a red class, but you're wearing green for the class of 74, our 50th reunion class, right? Because we're green, right? There's the greens of 74. So Beatrice graduated in 2012 with a political science and business major, double major, business and political science. You see her bio on the screen and in the papers. Then she went on to Columbia for her journalism degree, and she's worked for Politico for a little bit, but she's been with ABC News for a very long time. She is not an opinion columnist, which is what we heard today, but she's actually a working journalist reporting from the field. She's covered campaigns. She's currently working on a big trial down in Virginia. And you also recently had a piece in NBC about was it NBC? No, it must be ABC because you work for ABC. But it was about, you know, the city getting ready for January 6th and what's going to happen. So we'll talk about that. But the other thing that got me interested in making sure that Beatrice would come today, our next session after this is about Shirley Chisholm's book, Unbought and Unbossed. It's part of our Trinity Read series. And Beatrice wrote a really terrific Substack essay about the role of black women in politics and how Shirley Chisholm was like the mother of everything, and she started it. So without further ado, please welcome Beatrice Peterson, ABC News.
Okay, here we go. All right, awesome. Thank you very much, President McGuire. Thank you all for being here. Good afternoon, everyone. You know, it's a common saying every 4 years that this is the most historic election of your lifetime. We hear it all the time, all the time. However, I'm here to tell you that this election truly is the most historic election. My name is Beatrice Peterson, and I'm a recovering campaign reporter. In 2020, I spent a year and a half working 6 days a week covering the critical 2020 election. When coronavirus first hit America, getting tested every day was a new normal for me. They found a way to get the reporters tested because we were just feet away from the President of the President-elect and the President of the United States, and there was fears that we could give them COVID. 4 years later, while the pandemic may have receded, although it's still around, this election has proven to be even more pivotal. I know many of us have heard this before, but this election, if you don't take anything else away, just remember that history doesn't happen overnight. As a reporter, I get the honor of seeing history be made every single day. Just this morning, I was in court, federal court in Alexandria, where a federal judge ruled to reverse the cancellation of 1,600 voters from the voter rolls. Some people call it a voter purge. A lot of times when I've reported, I've been the only woman or the only black person in the room, especially during many of the January 6th Oath Keepers and Proud Boys trials. I was at Black Lives Matter Plaza for over 2 months after the death of George Floyd, and my most recent journey through modern history began in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2012. Hey, Charlotte! My mom's from Chester. I really don't remember who gave me this tip, but I was told to pay attention and start covering a very obscure local politician from San Francisco who a source told me was going to be the next Obama. And in 2012, everyone was the next Obama. I had heard of this woman for many years prior. My late mother, who is from South Carolina, despite only knowing how to use a flip phone and not really knowing how to use the internet, had better intelligence than the CIA and better gossip than Wendy Williams. 3 years later, while working at Politico, I traveled to Los Angeles to cover that politician who had recently announced her run for Senate. And by 2019, I was traveling to a new state every 2 to 3 days, covering that same woman. If you hadn't guessed by now, that woman was Kamala Devi Harris. And I would eventually spend election night with her in Wilmington, Delaware, and President Joe Biden in 2020. But it's been 12 long years. And being that it's been 12 years since I first began covering her, she stands on the cusp of making history again, potentially as the first female president of the United States. And if she wins, she would also be the first Asian American and only the second African American to hold that office. But remember, I told you that history doesn't happen overnight. Regardless of who wins the White House, women are poised to make history in 2025. Congress will likely elect its first transgendered woman to serve in the House of Representatives. If Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester from Delaware, who's very likely to win her bid, or Prince George's County Executive Angela Also Brooks wins their campaign for Senate, she will join California Senator LaFonza Butler, making it the first time we've ever had multiple black women serving in Congress simultaneously. This is just 32 years after Carol Moseley Brown became the first African American woman elected to the Senate. Let that sink in, 32 years. That's a lot of firsts all at once, but those firsts should not come as a surprise. Now more than ever, black women are being courted by both major political parties. When I first covered Donald Trump's first bid for president, he often spoke about the black vote. He talked about a lot of things, but the black vote in particular, he said, and a lot of people didn't really pick up on it, but sometimes some of Trump's dog whistles sometimes are not that loud. This one was more silent. He said he needed only 10% of black voters to win the election. 10%. Now, Republicans in the era of Trump hadn't forgotten that and had courted black voters in ways that the Republican Party didn't decades ago. Now, for any Democratic person who's running for president, it's very important. If you want to make it out of the primary alive, you have to secure the black woman voter. Point blank, period. Early in my career, I would often talk about black female voters deciding elections. Many other reporters, some my age, some younger, some older, would scoff. However, I started getting apologies this summer, which was very refreshing. One reporter, who's a very esteemed reporter, even told me this summer out of the blue, found me on Twitter, and apologized for even doubting me 4 or 5 years ago. I was early, but I was right about some things, and I have all the tweets to prove it. I told him in 2017 that Kamala Harris would run for the White House and would be the Democratic Party's nominee in either 2020 or 2024. That prediction was far from a lucky guess, I will admit, but it was the experience and knowledge that I gained here at Trinity that helped me come to that conclusion. For me, my experience at Trinity helped me view politics through a different lens, and I bring a little bit of my Trinity experience everywhere I go. I'm asking, all the time, if I see a sea of advisors and it's all men, where are the women? Who's the woman in charge? Who is the up-and-coming woman politician that I need to be paying attention to? And in case you're wondering, I already have my sights on 2028. but I'll leave my predictions for another speech. However, black women are still important to this electorate. Black women are the reason that Biden made it to the White House after traveling frequently to South Carolina. Him and his wife, Jill Biden, would travel to some of the most rural communities, cities that may have not had stoplights or were just cities that have a stop sign. My mom's hometown is one of those. And after this election, black female voters will be on the forefront of the conversation. The question that everyone will be asking after Election Day is, did the Democrats successfully mobilize black women to elevate Vice President Kamala Harris to the Oval Office? Or did the Republican Party under Donald Trump manage to gain enough black women to support him getting back into power? If I had those answers, however, I'd be a billionaire. But we'll have those answers collectively in 2 weeks. Regardless of the outcome, just remember that history doesn't happen overnight, but it does have a way of repeating itself. And I know this because in 1971, the Congressional Black Caucus was created with 13 members, including the late Shirley Chisholm, who ran for president in 1972. The Congressional Black Caucus has grown substantially since then, and it has a total of 60 members this year. Chisholm's historic candidacy was supported by young staffers who are well known these days, including Congresswoman Barbara Lee from California and Reverend Al Sharpton from the National Action Network. When Vice President Harris announced her first bid for the White House in January 25th of 2019 at Howard University, it was nearly 47 years to the day after Chisholm's historic 1972 announcement that she too would be running for president. Harris, the daughter of immigrants, paid homage to Chisholm with a logo that featured a color scheme very similar to Shirley Chisholm's 72 bid. And on the campaign trail, one of the most memorable experiences I had 4 years ago and also this time around was watching Harris speak to young men and young women, particularly young women, who wanted to run for president because she did. They may have not agreed with her politics, but being able to see that for a lot of them shaped conversations that they were able to have with themselves to say, I want to run for office, or I can be the next president. So, we don't know. The next presidential candidate or future Speaker of the House might be sitting in this very room today. But we do know one thing, that history doesn't repeat itself. And it does repeat itself, but it doesn't happen overnight. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Beatrice. Come sit by me. Okay. We're going to have a little chat here, and we'll open up for audience questions, and then we're going to have Trinity reads about Shirley Chisholm in a few minutes. So, first of all, that was just so great. We just heard a panel of the rising generation of students talking about the politics of color and about how they, as rising young Black and Latino women, are less impressed by the fact that Vice President Harris is a Black woman of South Asian descent, and she's female, and they tend to look more at politics. And we can all say, of course you should look at the values and all, but can you respond to the issue of what does it mean to have someone who might be president who is a woman of color? Does that have any meaning?
I think it does have a big meaning, but I think that last panel touched upon some things that I've heard from a lot of young voters, particularly ones that are, I would say, 30 and under, that, kind of in the aftermath of Obama, they already had that first Black president. And some of them were not excited about the aftermath of his presidency. And so I've heard this from a lot of voters that when they're looking for a candidate, no longer are they looking for the first. They're looking for policy. They're looking for initiatives. They're looking for more than just first, I guess, is the best way to say it. And so I think it's very interesting and I think very telling, this last panel, on a lot of things that I think a lot of people may not pick up with this electorate, because they're a lot younger and they're more inclined to use social media and all the things. But this younger generation, I would say under 30, is very, 30 and under, is very attuned to policy, much more so than I think a lot of other generations.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think that's really true. I think we've picked up on that. So you've been out on the campaign trail, though, and you are with other reporters. And the impression some of us have of some of the media, not you, but other media, is that they really don't understand these issues, that their take on a lot of the issues seems to be driven by polls and by maybe rumors, you know, that they pick up at some campaign staffer, and then it suddenly becomes, you know, everybody on this campaign is upset about because one person had a thing. Do reporters actually do their homework? Do they actually get in underneath the news, or do they just report what they hear?
I'm finding with this election, particularly every day or so, I'm hearing there's some new person that has a new scandal that they're going to tweet out in a couple of hours, and then nothing happens. It's like, what is going on? We do our homework. I'm not a big fan of the polls personally. I think that they are a snapshot in time, and by the time we get the data, the electorate has probably shifted a little bit. Things happen between the time. It usually takes like a week or two to get the polling data like in and analyzed and all the things. And so one of the things that, you know, I personally do as a reporter is I go out into communities that either might look like mine or might not, and I go and talk to folks. And I'll tell them I'm a reporter, but I just want to listen. I want to hear how you feel about different things. And I've traveled to everything from bars that are frequented by white supremacists. I've been with the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, but I've also been in urban communities and rural communities. I think that's a hard thing, I think, these days with the way that the election cycle is, because you just have so much coming in that it's very hard. It's kind of like drinking, the election is kind of like drinking, I don't know, out of a fire hose with a straw. I mean, it's a lot all coming out at once. And I think there is, I think, more transparency now in this generation when we have social media, where reporters are able to say, hey, I'm not always going to get things right, or I might not be able to tell you all the stories that I would like to tell you, but, you know, I'm not an expert, and we all make mistakes too. And I think that that's something that I think may have not been as transparent in the past, but now reporters are able to say, hey, like, I made mistakes in 2016, or I made mistakes in 2020. I'm going to try and be better. But we're human, you know, we're not AI, so. Yet.
We could have another whole talk on AI, but I won't take it off. We have a few minutes left before next, and so Ronnie, if you could do your thing again. Questions from the audience for Beatrice. There's one right back there.
No question, too big or small.
No question.
Test.
Okay, there we go.
Hello. Thank you so much for your speech. Just now when you were talking about making mistakes, it kind of made me think about the recent cancel culture that we have. So how do you feel, or what are your views on accepting correction, but also not being forgiving? How do we battle this, you know, cancel culture, and just move on?
You know, I think it's interesting. I think a lot of Americans don't realize how in-depth cancel culture can be in this country. I've been doxxed more times than I can remember. Probably, and doxing just means people put your information on the internet. So they might put your address, your email, your phone numbers, and tell people to prank call you or send you crazy mail. I have a mailer that sends me something. I have a guy that sends me some mail every month or so. That's kind of weird, but to my house. But the cancel culture, I think, is a hard one, right? It's who gets to decide what gets canceled and what doesn't. And I find that for a lot of people, they kind of get caught up in that idea of cancel culture in a way that is very consuming. I was canceled in 2020 for some reporting that some people didn't like. It was about a candidate who actually got canceled twice. So so to speak. One was a candidate that didn't have any people of color on his campaign, and I had said that this candidate is not going to win the Democratic nomination for president if he does not be able to bridge the gap between his candidacy and the black vote. He ultimately did not win because he could not make it out of South Carolina because he did not have enough black voters in the most diverse primary state in the election. But also, I was doxxed the second time because I had said another candidate just was not doing well with black voters too, and their fans didn't like it. I would say the most important thing to surviving cancel culture is knowing your facts and looking up information and knowing both sides of every issue so that when people try and cancel you later on, they can cancel you because of their own personal opinions, not because you were wrong about the facts. And so I was canceled for those two things, and there were two very large fan bases that canceled me. And now a lot of the people who lead that fan base look for my reporting because although they were upset because I had reported things that they didn't want to hear, it was still true. And I think that's the key to cancel culture, is making sure you're rooted in truth.
Great answer. Great answer. Another question? Okay, one more. There we go. One more there, and then one more there, and then we'll go on to the next one.
Oh, hi, I'm Fatima. I just wanted to ask, I know people were asking earlier about whether they're spending too much time on the fact that Kamala Harris is going to be, the first black president, or first female president. And I just wanted to know if you think there are any policies that are being overshadowed by that, and how you think that would actually affect the outcome of the election.
I think that's a great question. I think there's a lot that goes along with the candidacy that is very unusual. I mean, beyond the first that she makes, she has a very shortened period of time to introduce herself to Americans who may have only known her as the vice president but couldn't pronounce her name right, or wasn't really sure much about her other than she's the lady that stands next to Joe Biden. And it's a hard thing. I think there's a lot of policies that are kind of being overlooked, but also she has to define herself as a candidate away from President Joe Biden. And that's a hard thing to do as a candidate who has maybe a year to do it, or 2 years when you're running. It's another thing to do it in 90 days. It's very hard, a little bit over 90, but it's very hard. I think there's a lot of policies that she's still kind of rolling out. There was the one that she rolled out recently for black men, but it's hard to digest that when you have a daily clock going to election day. So, I think a lot of voters, I think we heard a lot from the panel before us, wants to hear about her foreign policy plans. I think a lot of people want to hear from a lot of various policies, but it's hard to talk about policies when you don't have debates. So it's a catch-22 that's a very difficult question to answer. I think everything comes down to the economy right now, though. I think the economy is huge. People want to know how they can feed their families, how they can, if they're going to do the right pay for their work, and et cetera. So I think the economic policies are probably the biggest thing.
Okay. Thank you, Beatrice. Last question goes to the class of 74. All right.
Yay! Yeah, we're celebrating our 50th reunion here. So you've been out on the field and you have been watching over these campaigns, and I was curious, I wanted to know what your sense of the Green Party effort to get themselves on the ballot for this election. They have made a considerable effort, and even if it's not successful ultimately in this election, what are your views about the strides that they have made, for the future?
I'll broaden that. Well, congrats on the 50th, by the way. But I would broaden that question out a little bit to third-party ballots just in general. I think not just the Green Party, but there's several other parties that are running as third-party races. I covered a big one in 2020 by the name of Kanye West. I was his embed too, and I got the call in the middle of the night saying, Kanye West is running for president. Can you give the story to Politico? We'll give you the second exclusive. I was dumb and I went with that, but whatever. You know, I think it's hard, right? I think the Green Party, as well as Cornel West's bid for the presidency, kind of in RFK's, which is no longer, but was for a while. I think it highlights a shift that I was expecting to see in 2020. I think COVID kind of roiled that a little bit, that people in this country are no longer, especially the younger people, are no longer tied to a party anymore. They want to see what the parties are going to do for them. They want to know what initiatives work better than others for them. And when it comes to various policies, they kind of have a list. I mean, I've seen folks go into heated discussions or heated conversation with campaigns show up, and they want to know, you know, they have a list of things that they want to hear about. And if they see that whole list and one party has more of the list than the other, they're going to vote for that candidate. And so I think the third-party bids are going to become a bigger thing in 2028. I think they're starting to. I mean, ballot access, again, was a big thing in 2020 for Kanye. I think RFK Jr. Kind of expanded on that. I think the Green Party is expanding on that as well right now. So I don't know if we will have a third-party candidate in 2028. I would love to have that crystal ball, too. But I think in the next probably 4 to 8 years, we're going to have a viable third-party bid. Now, if it's the Green Party, I don't know. But it will be a third party, I believe, in the next couple of years.
All right. Beatrice Peterson. Isn't she fabulous? Patrick Kellogg. Okay.
Scared.
Okay. The Trinity Times reporter speaks. Brittany McAllister. She wants to go to Columbia Journalism School, I think. Don't you, Brittany?
Columbia, NYU, mostly NYU.
Okay.
But if NYU don't take me, then Columbia, and if Columbia takes me, I go with Columbia.
Okay.
But I want to be the best.
Yeah.
And so actually, I have a question about journalism to you, because I'm in my last semester. I'm going to be graduating in the winter, like December is like my last semester, and my major is journalism and media studies. And obviously, I work for Trinity Times, and I also do a paid internship outside the university, working for the Hill Rag, Mid-City DC, and East of the River. So far, most of my publications have been with East of the River, and so I want to know, do you have any advice to people with a formal education in journalism who wants to break into the field? Because anybody can go to school and major in journalism and come out, but not everybody with a formal education in the field breaks into the field of journalism. And I really want to break into the field, but I know it's very competitive. So my goal is really to just continue to like get experience, and then hopefully I get into one of the best schools for journalism to make me stand out. But yeah, do you have any advice to people like me?
Well, first off, thank you so much for that question. And thank you for your work at Trinity Times. It's so incredibly important. And if anyone else from the Trinity Times is here, I want to congratulate them for their work. I think that's a very good question. I grew up east of the river in DC, and I did not know any journalists. To be honest, I didn't even study journalism when I was at Trinity. It wasn't a major at the time. Mass communications, I think, was. But I had never had an internship in journalism while I was here. I thought I was going to be a politician or policy person, working on Capitol Hill or something. And I just happened to decide one day after having an amazing internship at the White House in my senior year that it was not for me. I wanted to ask questions, and you kind of can't ask questions of your boss when you're an employee, but you can as a journalist. And I said that's acceptable. I said that might be something I wanted to do. So what I did was, not knowing anyone in news at all, I started going up to people, and I was like, if I saw a camera or a major event that was going to happen, actually, the major event I went to was Rand Paul was giving a speech at, the senator, he was giving a speech when he was running for president in 2012 at Howard University, and trying to court the black vote. And I knew that there was going to be a lot of reporters because I saw it on the news. And so I went to every reporter who was going to be there before and after the speech, and I said, hey, I'm a student. Do you have any advice? Like, do you have an internship? Can I freelance? I don't really know how to write, but I'll figure it out. And I just kept doing that. And I got a lot of no's or, maybes or, we don't have anything for you, but let's stay in touch. And I followed up with those people, and eventually I was in Charlotte in 2012 for the DNC, and I had gotten an email from someone who wanted to interview me because they love stories about the kids who were college students who are running, their views on the election. It's always something people love every 4 years. And I said, I don't want to do the interview, but I don't want to be an interviewee, but I'll do the interview. And I can get you some college students. Like, let me get you some college students. I know some great students you should talk to. And I did the interview, and at the end of it, I said, well, I can keep doing this for you if you'd like. I'd be glad to get some coffee for you if you need it every day. And I just need an internship. And it didn't have to be that formal. I just need a job. And that job was for a French news agency based in D.C., and I don't speak any French. So I learned some, but beyond bonjour, I couldn't say very much. And that's how I got my start as a journalist. And I made a lot of mistakes, but I kept trying at things. So I did a podcast off of cell phones, which is the worst way you can do a podcast. Like, to this day, I want to delete it from the internet. But I just tried it, and we ended up doing really, really great. And it was a financial podcast, and we got more views and streams than Susie Orman, which was a big deal. It was a weird thing, but you just have to try things. So I would say try a newsletter, try Substack, it's free to sign up. Try and just ask your classmates to sign up. Like, that's nothing. Tweet, whatever you see. I started watching the news, and like if I saw a press conference or a speech, I would tweet out the speech. And just getting that repetition, embodying a reporter is what I wanted to do, was eventually got me to this point. But you're already doing way more than I did when I was at Trinity in journalism. You know how to write a story. I didn't know what a lead was or a graph. I thought that was a pie graph or a pie chart, even while I was at Columbia. So I just say keep at it, keep doing the work, and I might be working for you next year.
We're all going to be working for her someday. She's really good. So, Beatrice, thank you so much. It's been great to have you here. And now we're going to segue immediately into our final session of the afternoon.